There is a difference between wanting to communicate with your own loved ones in spirit, between your own loved ones on the other side in the afterlife, and psychic mediumship development. And wanting to do the former, wanting to communicate with your own loved ones on the other side, is absolutely attainable. You can absolutely do that. That does not mean that you need to engage in mediumship development. They are not the same thing. They are totally different. So you can go down one road without having to go down both roads. And that's what this video is about. This video is going to help you learn the basic general ways in which we can learn to communicate with our own loved ones on the other side. This video is going to help you learn why it is possible or how it is possible to communicate with your own loved ones in spirit. So if that interests you, definitely keep watching. We're going to go ahead and get right into it. So first off, what is the difference between communicating with your own loved ones and mediumship development? Well, communicating with your own loved ones is having spiritual contact, soul-to-soul contact with people who you knew one-on-one when they were here living in the physical. So that would mean your own family members, your own friends, people who you had face-to-face, one-on-one contact with when they were living in physical bodies, but those physical bodies have since died and their souls are now in spirit. You only have soul-to-soul contact with those particular people in the afterlife. That is having spiritual contact with your own loved ones in spirit. Whereas mediumship development is learning to, training to, studying to become a psychic medium for the aim of helping the collective, for the aim of helping other people communicate with their loved ones, for the aim of helping other people with grief, for the aim of providing evidence that you yourself are a conduit for other people with their loved ones. Mediumship development is essentially kind of schooling to become a psychic medium, schooling to do what I do. It is for helping other people obtain spiritual contact through evidential means to receive messages. It is learning to become an ethical psychic medium. That's not what this video is about. I'm just differentiating between what the two things are. Okay, so how do we engage in spiritual contact with our own loved ones, and or how is it possible? The first thing that is absolutely imperative if you are looking to communicate or receive information from your loved ones in spirit on the other side is you need to make the conscious decision. Are you going to trust yourself and are you going to trust them? Because if you are in a place where you don't feel that you can surrender trust to yourself, you can surrender trust to them, it is not going to work for you. You need to decide if you fully believe that this is possible. By that I mean, if you are somebody who is very cynical towards spirit communication being possible, if you are somebody who is very cynical about an afterlife even being probable, then you are going to go into wanting to receive communication from them with a wall up. And wanting to receive communication from them yourself with such a wall up is going to be exponentially harder than simply going to a psychic medium and receiving evidence from a psychic medium. See, a psychic medium giving you a reading, they're going to be providing you with evidence that they themselves could not have otherwise known because they didn't know you, they didn't know your loved one. However, when you are communicating with your own loved one on your own without the use of a psychic medium, they can give you evidence. Your loved one can give you evidence. However, the evidence is going to be much sparser, much fewer, and in between. So you need to engage in much deeper trust than you would if you were going to a psychic medium where the evidence is verbally given to you. It's right in your face, right? So by that I mean, when you're working with a loved one on your own, you're going to have bits and pieces of evidence here or there. It's going to be very few and in between. For example, evidence might look like you might receive a piece of information as a feeling or an image that makes zero sense to you in the moment, but then maybe a few days later, that image makes sense because something comes into your awareness, into your path, into your daily life that brings clarity to the image, clarity to the feeling. In other words, your loved one is validating something that's going on in your life now. That's really the only type of evidence that they're going to be able to give you, is going to be pieces of information going on in your life now, or possibly pieces of information about them that you yourself didn't know but another living person does. That's called third-party validation. Third-party validation when working with your own loved ones is going to be pretty rare. That's more common working with psychic mediums, but I guess it could happen working with your own loved ones. However, most evidence working with your own loved ones is going to be about things happening in your own life that you yourself do not yet know and that they bring into your path, into your awareness. And it is very few. It's very sparse, it's very few and far between. In other words, you are not going to be relying on evidence working with your loved ones on your own. Therefore, building trust in yourself, relying on trust in yourself, determining if you have trust in yourself and trust in them is imperative before embarking on the journey to work with them on your own. And it is absolutely possible, 100% possible to have that trust. It's about trust in the process, trust that this is possible, and trust to validate your own feelings and your sensory experiences. When I say have trust in yourself, what I mean is trusting yourself to not invalidate your experiences by allowing your human brain to talk you out of what you are experiencing. That is what I am meaning when I'm saying trust. If you experience a feeling or if you experience an image in your mind, you need to trust yourself that you actually experienced that and not allow yourself 15 minutes later, a day later, to talk yourself out of your own experiences. That is what I say by you need to decide, are you going to have that trust? That is the first step to communicating with your own loved ones on the other side. The next step to working with your own loved ones on the other side is to gain a basic level understanding of how it is possible. And how it is possible is understanding at a basic level that you are a soul in a human body, and that your loved one, when they were alive, was also a soul in a human body, and that soul is comprised of pure energy as you are, and that when their human body died, the soul did not die with the human body. The soul lives on. Therefore, that energy still very much exists. That soul still very much exists. Understand the basic premise, the basic principle that what mediumship is, what spirit communication is your soul energy working with their soul energy. So think of mediumship as, or spirit communication as a soul working with a soul, right? We do it all the time. We don't even know it. Now, what you need to think of in terms of your humanity is your brain. Your brain is like a filtration system for the energy. Your soul could be working with their soul right now. But what good is that if you're not receiving any of the fruits of what's going on, right? If that energy, if that information of your soul working with their soul isn't making it to your consciousness, right? So your brain is like the filtration system. So they will be sending you information, you will be receiving it soul to soul level, but it needs to make it to here, right? And that is where our what we call clairs come in. The clairs are the psychic senses, and the psychic senses are the means by which our filtration system or our brain translate the energetic communication of the soul, our soul, working with their soul. Or the filtration system, if we want to keep working with that wording, work through sight, hearing, feeling, and knowing and tasting and smelling. So your consciousness will filter the soul energy communication from your loved one in those ways. And the reason that it's filtered in those ways is because the soul-to-soul communication needs to be translated into sensory experiences that we as humans can understand. I do have a free mini ebook that goes more in depth about the clairs and how they work and how they function that you can absolutely grab and download. I'll link it in the description below. But for now, just understand that we hear, see, feel, know, taste, smell information from our loved ones. I also have a few videos on my channel that go more in depth, specifically with seeing and hearing, which are clairvoyance and clairaudience. I will link those up above here. I go in depth of what it's like to see spirit, how to tell seeing and hearing from your imagination as well. So definitely check out those videos if they are something that interests you. Now, something else to understand is that we as souls are sensing other souls all the time, even if they are still in living human bodies, and we trust it. But for some reason, I shouldn't even say for some reason, but we have been conditioned that if we don't see it with our eyes, we shouldn't trust it, right? So like the souls that we sense that are no longer in human bodies, we've been conditioned that we shouldn't trust it, even though we're still sensing them all the time. Since the beginning of my mediumship development, and let me just explain that statement there a little bit deeper here. Since the beginning of my mediumship development, when people have asked me to explain what it's like, I've always given this comparison, this exact comparison to explain it. And I have said to them, imagine that you are at Target and you have a cart full of stuff and you're ready to check out. So you wheel your cart up to the checkout lane back before everything was self-checkout and they still checked things out for you, but I digress. You wheeled your things up to the checkout lane and you got in line. You're waiting there and somebody got in line behind you. You didn't hear them, you didn't see them, but you knew that somebody got in line behind you. That is what it's like since spirit. You know they're there. They're on the peripheral of your consciousness. You can turn around and say hello if you so choose, or you can keep your back turned and just go about your business. But they're always there, and they're going to remain there whatever you choose to do. You can choose to embrace it, and you can choose to engage the communication or start the communication, I should say, or you can choose to not. But you sense their presence. And one would argue that you're not sensing their physicality. You did not hear them. You did not see them. You are sensing their presence. And that is very much like spirit communication is. That is why clairsentience, which is clear feeling, which is the psychic sense of feeling, is extremely common when we're working with our own loved ones on the other side. It's often one of the very first things that people experience after somebody dies. It's often the very first or the very most common psychic sense that people experience with their loved ones. They'll say, I feel them. I feel them in the room with me. I can sense their presence. Because as souls, we very often, we experience that all day long in our daily lives. We never doubt it because we're able to validate it with our physical eyes if we so choose. But when it happens with those who are in the afterlife on the other side, it's like we've never taken a moment to stop and think about what is actually happening, what we're actually experiencing, until we're grieving somebody. And then we start experiencing it, and then we're like, oh wait, I don't trust myself. I'm crazy. No, this can't be right. But it is right. You've always experienced it. You experienced it with that person when they were alive. And when they were alive, you didn't doubt it. you were experiencing the very same feeling with that person who's now in spirit when they were alive, and your back would be turned at the kitchen sink washing dishes and they walked in the kitchen, and you had headphones on and you couldn't hear they walked in the kitchen. You couldn't see they walked in the kitchen. You couldn't feel any footsteps or anything, but you sensed they walked in the kitchen. You felt their presence, and you didn't doubt that. You didn't doubt the validation within yourself. But now that their physical body is gone and you're feeling them, you're suddenly doubting it. That doesn't make sense. You're feeling the exact same thing. It's your soul feeling their soul. And that is what spirit communication is. That's one of the many ways that we experience spirit communication, is through that clairsentience, and it's one of the most common ways. It goes back again to that Target example and the example I just gave in the kitchen. They're one and the same. They're parallel examples, but that hopefully that explains a little bit about what it's like and the potentiality behind it. Let me give you some real life examples of validation that has come up in my readings with clients' spirit loved ones, that they themselves have experienced communication with them one-on-one without me present. This is examples, again, of spirit validating through me the communication that the clients had originally trusted themselves and knew happened. Because spirit had the opportunity and they were in front of me, they just chose to validate it anyway. One example would be, I was working with a client and her husband's in spirit, and he showed me an image clairvoyantly in my head of, he took me to my own backyard and my garage and the way that my yard is laid out, because that's him using my frame of reference. I've talked about frame of reference quite a bit on my social media if you follow me on Instagram or TikTok. And he showed me walking from my garage into my house. And I told her that, and she said, "Oh my God, I saw him." And it was the coolest thing. She said that she was outside in her backyard and she saw an apparition of her husband walk from her garage to her house. And she knew it in the moment, and it gave her the full body chills in a good way, that he was making himself known. And that was his way of validating through me. Yep, babe, that was me. And she didn't need that validation. He just chose to, give the validation through me. I've also had a client's dog validate in a reading that it was indeed him making the bed move. She had felt him jump up onto the bed and knew it was him making the bed move in that way, just like he always would have jumped up onto the bed when he was alive. I have had my own grandma flash in a subjective clairvoyant image of her pulling the covers up to my chin. That's an example of how spirit can communicate visually through clairvoyance. I've had clients report their loved ones physically touching them on their cheeks. I've had clients report their hair being touched or their hair being moved. And this is in addition to the clairsentient feeling of loved ones being present within your space, just the clairsentient feeling of their presence. That's going to be the most common. The clairsentient feeling of emotion, the clairsentient feeling of them just simply being there. I have had a client's mom in spirit validate a song that she had popped into into the client's mind, her daughter's mind, while she was rocking her new baby in her nursery at night. Now, this isn't actually playing the song out loud. This is the client's mom had given it to her clairaudiently within her headspace, and the client's mom validated that in a reading by giving the song to me. Now that's something that the client had originally trusted. She knew that the mom had been giving her that song in her head. Again, I have a video on my channel here about how to tell clairaudience from your own imagination. So watch that if you're interested in learning more about that for yourself. But her mom just took the opportunity to validate through me because she had the opportunity to validate through me. So that's a real life example of how they can communicate with hearing. They can do all sorts of things with you, with vision, feeling, hearing, knowing, which is you'll just know things, and even taste and smell. The potentialities are endless. They can absolutely communicate with you one-on-one without needing a psychic medium to do so. It happens all the time. I have things validated in readings all the time. I have students validate with me who are in my workshop Limitless, which literally helps guide students, helps guide you to learn how to communicate with your own loved ones, experiences that they have had. Loved ones can even give you emotions as a sense of communication. That's another form of clairsentience. So I hear it all the time from people. And on top of just trusting myself and knowing from my own experiences, my family members have experiences all the time too. It's all around us. People are experiencing this every single day, and you absolutely can too. So let's get into a little bit more of what is needed to make this happen in your life. Quieting the mind is imperative. That's probably next in line in terms of importance after trust. So you need to have trust first and quieting the mind second. And by quieting the mind, I don't mean that you need to have a quiet mind in terms of perfection. Your mind doesn't need to be perfectly quiet all the time, and you need to be like this enlightened monk to receive communication or anything like that. I mean that in order to get better at recognizing spirit communication, you do need to take some steps in your day-to-day life to go down the road of engaging in a quieter state of mind, just making efforts to engage in a quieter state of mind. Meaning like if you're at a 10, you want to try to get yourself to a 9.8 over time. And we do some exercises in my workshop Limitless to help with this. And this isn't to say you need to be in like a deep state of meditation all the time. That's not at all what I'm saying. It just means you need to engage in some sensory activities to try to quiet your mind and to try to be better apprised, more aware of your day-to-day surroundings. So the reason that we want to do this is because as humans, we walk around in, what's been dubbed, I guess, the rat race. Whether you work or you stay home, or you're retired or disabled or a student or whatever the case may be, we walk around day in and day out, and we are totally engaged with our 3D surroundings and what we need to do next and the next task and our ego mind chatter. We're very much about our inner mind voice, and that is kind of what rules us, is our mind chatter and our inner voice. And in order for our soul to cut through that, and thus spirit communication, because remember, spirit communication is soul to soul, in order for spirit communication to cut through that, there needs to be like a quiet blip. They need to be able to get through that chatter, right? So there needs to be the ability for that chatter to be somewhat quieted, or the ability for you to be able to put it to the side enough to recognize, hey, this is me, this is my chatter, and this is not. And that is what being more aware of you, being more aware of your surroundings, and better engaging in what those things are versus what they are not helps with. And better quieting the mind also helps you to become more aligned with your own energy and better aware of your own energy, right? So it's all intertwined. It's all helpful with the spirit communication, if not imperative. And again, it's not about perfection. You can absolutely receive communication with your own loved ones if you are ADHD, if you are anxious. It's just, if you are like way up there in terms of mind chatter and a busy mind, you are going to have a more difficult time maybe receiving longer communication or more frequent communication, or maybe getting to that level of trust than somebody who doesn't or hasn't, but you can absolutely still receive. It just might be a little more difficult because quieting the mind is imperative, and meditation is also pretty important. I want to say imperative here. I really do want to say imperative, but I don't want to turn people away from trying for spirit communication and broadening and deepening that relationship if they're really turned off by meditation. So I'm going to say important instead of imperative. You can engage in sensory activities to help and likely still receive spirit communication, but you're going to have a much greater degree of success if you engage in a meditation practice, even if it's 5 minutes a day. And that's also where my workshop Limitless takes you. It's definitely a meditation course to help you with spirit communication. You're going to receive much more fruitful spirit communication through meditation. So I do highly, highly, highly recommend meditation as a mind quieting spirit communication technique in tandem with mind awareness, sensory awareness activities. When we become better aware of our own energy, we're able to more subtly recognize when there's a shift with somebody else's energy coming in. We're able to better recognize that shift of somebody else's energy coming in. And therefore, if we have a thought image or thought words along with that shift of energy, that's how communication works, right? That's how when we know, hey, that thought or that image is not coming from me because there's been a shift in energy along with it. So everything that I just covered is all intertwined. The quieting of the mind chatter, the recognizing that, hey, this is my human brain, my human consciousness, my human mind kind of going. I am learning to put this to the side and separate it from myself. I am learning to be more aware of my surroundings. Essentially you're learning to kind of separate everything out into pieces, and you're learning to feel yourself more from the inside is a good way of putting it as well. It's sensory activities and learning to quiet the mind. It's a bit difficult to put into words until you start engaging in it, but it really is a miraculous thing once you get into it. And it is definitely imperative for successful and regular spirit communication with your loved ones on the other side. I'm not saying you can't receive without it, but if you want to maintain a regular, or I should say if you want to deepen a relationship with a loved one on the other side, it is necessary to strive to go from that, say if you're a 10 down to a 9.8 in terms of mind chatter, in terms of engaging in sensory awareness, in terms of working on your soul relationship with yourself and your energetic relationship with yourself is super important. And then there's meditation as well. And again, we go over all of this in Limitless, which you can read more about in the description of this video. The reason that meditation is so amazing for communicating with your loved ones on the other side is because during meditation, you are a much clearer vessel for a longer length of time. So while sensory activities and learning to quiet the mind and everything I just spoke about will help you in your day-to-day life with receiving communication from your loved ones more regularly, you're going to receive that communication as a blip here or a blip there or a piece of information there. Whereas meditation, you're going in with the intention to sit in meditation for 10 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever the case may be. And you are an open vessel. Nobody meditates perfectly. You'll have some mind chatter come in here or there, but you are taught to, at least how I teach it, is to acknowledge the thought and push, just let it flow away, right? So for all intensive purposes, you are an open vessel for your loved one, for a longer period of time. This means that they have the opportunity to deepen that relationship with you, to engage with that relationship, to blend with your energy. They are openly blending with your energy for that period of time, even if they are not actively able to get you information for that time period, or at first. They are blending with your energy. They are strengthening that relationship for that period of time. And that strengthens, the energetic bond that the two of you have, and it helps that relationship to build. It helps you to become better. And there are so many instances that pieces of information come in from our loved ones. And I love stories like this. They come in from our loved ones during meditation, and they don't make sense until they make sense. Let me explain that. So from spirit, we tend to get a lot of metaphors. So spirit, when it comes to clairvoyance, especially, even clairsentience, they're tasked often with using a lot of metaphors. And if you think about playing Pictionary and charades with the living, and this is how I explain it to clients too. We have to get super creative when we're playing those games with the living, because things are not as straightforward as they seem. If we're trying to communicate something, we have to get creative, we have to get metaphorical, we have to think outside the box to get across information. Spirit is essentially playing charades. They're essentially playing Pictionary, whether it's with an image, with a feeling, or what have you. They're thinking creatively, so things are not always as they seem. And during meditation, you might get an image of something that you're like, oh my God, or what the heck is that? That is my mind making something up, and you push it to the side and you're like, that's nothing. That's my mind. But then it turns out not to be, because a couple days later you have an aha light bulb moment, and it was a very deep, very emotionally heartfelt message from your loved one that you figure out. Either within yourself you figure it out, or you figure it out with their help by something crossing your path. And it turns into a message you could not have made up, that it's so deep you couldn't have made it up. Or maybe it links to another meditation, like you do a second meditation a couple days later and something else comes in that explains it, right? That happens all the time. Those would only be possible in meditation, because if you were experiencing those sorts of strange images or feelings coming in your day-to-day life, they'd be there and gone in your mind chatter, in your, daily thought processes, and you would forget them. You would push them out. You'd be like, what the heck? Gone. But when they're coming in during a meditation, you're going to remember them more readily. We talk all about this in my workshop. I have practices and stuff for this. You are going to remember them more readily. They're going to impact you much more deeply. And this is another reason why meditation is such an important spirit communication technique with your own loved ones, so that they can get their out of the box creative pieces of information to you, that in day-to-day life it's more so they can get their literal stuff to you and not so much their creative pieces of information to you. So it really helps them for you to be willing to work on meditating as well. Some of the coolest pieces of information from my loved ones, the neatest things have come to me during my meditations. And I feel like if I didn't meditate, I'm a psychic medium. I do this for a living. Like, I talk to dead people every day for a living. I can say that if it weren't for meditation, my relationship with my own loved ones would be very flat instead of multidimensional. It's like meditation vastly, vastly, vastly deepens the relationship with my loved ones, with my own loved ones, because that's where I hate the term meat and potatoes, but I don't know what else to use here. That's where the meat and potatoes is. That's where you really dig into things together, is during meditations. One other last piece I wanted to touch on, just real quick before finishing up here, is people have a worry that if I dive into deepening my work with my loved one on the other side, doesn't that mean that I'm kind of opening up to mediumship development? and I'm going to open myself up to all spirits and everything like that, and I don't want to do that. And the answer is no, you are not going to. And this is why. So when you're working with your own loved ones, you're setting the intention to work with your own loved ones. So your loved ones are just a thought away. All you have to do is think of them, and that's the intention to work with them. You're not thinking about or intending to work with John down the street's dad, or whatever the case may be. I mean, like I said, I do this every day. I work with people's loved ones every day. And when I am not in front of a client, nobody else's people are around me. So I only work with my own loved ones when I am off the clock. That is literally not how it works. So when you are sitting down to work with the other side, you are sitting down to work with your other side, your people. You are not sitting down to open up and work with rando spirits. It just does not work that way. It does not work that way even for me. And I work with random spirits like when I'm on the clock all the time with other people's loved ones. It just doesn't work that way because that's not what the intention is. And because they don't have, like, random spirits don't have a relationship with you. There's literally no reason for them to want to communicate with you. They don't have that soul-to-soul relationship with you like your loved ones do. And if you don't want to engage in mediumship development, you just simply don't. You simply don't. And you keep it at development of your own relationship with your own loved ones, and that's where it stops. You just simply don't go down the other road. I mean, you have free will. You have choice. You will never be forced to do anything. So hopefully that clears things up for you. If you have questions about that, definitely comment them below. I can go into a little bit more clarity on that if there are questions. That's about it. If there are any questions, definitely drop them in the comments. If you are wanting to deepen your relationship with your loved one, I do have a couple of blog posts on this subject matter as well, which I will link below in the description, as well as the link for Limitless. If there's any other resources that I forgot to mention, I will link them too. So definitely check out that description. Otherwise, if you enjoyed this content, please go ahead and like and subscribe. Help my baby channel grow. On this channel, we talk about spirit, mediumship, the afterlife, animal communication, and my absolute passion, which is helping everyday people learn to communicate with their loved ones on the other side without the help of a psychic medium like me. Until next time, bye.